Welcome to Bible Studies Weekly.
Hey guys, Dave here, and in today's video I'm joined with my friend Andy. Say hello, Andy.
Hey.
And we're going to be giving you 10 tips if you're a guitar teacher, how to make your guitar lessons better, how to keep your students around, and how to run a better business. So let's get started. Tip number 1 is to encourage your students to practice. So do you have any thoughts on this? Top tips, yeah.
Do you want me to take that?
Yeah, you can take that.
Okay.
There you go.
No, I haven't got any. No.
Okay.
No. So encourage your students to practice. One of the biggest things I think is that they are interested in learning the instrument from the very beginning. So they're going to have definite interests that they're gonna want to pursue through their learning.
Yeah.
So what you've got to do is sort of give them the tools to kind of be able to do their own research as opposed to just doing the lesson plans.
Some independent learning.
Yeah, so
Okay.
to be able to kind of start learning what they need to learn in order to then kind of have their own study pieces as well.
Sure.
Because if they have their own study pieces, then they're always going to continually be interested because they're constantly getting perpetual lessons.
Yeah.
Kind of from just listening to a song and transcribing it or whatever.
Yeah.
It's useful for them to have their own study as well as just the stuff that you teach them.
Okay. So you'd say giving your students something to learn, but then something that they can go off and learn independently by themselves is going to help them practice more.
Yeah,
Yeah?
I think so, definitely.
Sure.
Because the best thing for them is that they need to continue the same interest that they had at the very beginning.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So one of my favorite quotes is Victor Wooten one. He says something along the lines of, I can't quote it or paraphrase it. He says, when we are very beginning, like we're kids, we don't focus on playing the right notes. In fact, we'll play air guitar and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You want to keep that kind of that mentality alive. Sure. You want it to always be about the fun, not necessarily about, oh, am I doing it right or wrong or anything like that. They've got to start doing it by attempting it themselves.
Yeah.
And doing like teaching themselves how to play a song and then coming back to you and going, is this right? As well as doing the lesson topics and stuff that you're teaching them.
Sure.
Yeah. So some of my best students, in fact, 2 come to mind straight off the bat. They learn everything that I ask them to in the lessons, but then they'll learn 5 more licks throughout the week.
Okay.
And then every week they'll improve vastly versus the people that have just done the lesson content, because they're clearly more interested in the bigger picture, not just what's going on in the lesson. They want to learn more, and it's just hunger. Sure. Isn't it?
Okay.
And I did that.
Sure, yeah. But I think that depends on the student as well, because I'll take that. So sometimes students are more motivated to practice than others. Mm-hmm. But then you'll have other students who aren't so motivated to practice. Yeah. And you kind of have to brute force the every lesson. Have you practiced? Have you practiced? Have you practiced?
Yeah, so that's where
there's some element of that to it. Like you have to.
That's where schedule comes in. Yeah, isn't it? So you then give them a little diary as they could say, oh, I have absolutely no time to practice, which isn't true because there's so many hours in the day.
How much time do they spend watching TV every
day?
Yeah.
Exactly. Or if you're a kid, if you're young, they're maybe 7 or 8 and they're just saying, oh, I'm too busy. They're not. Yeah. They're spending 2 hours a day playing. Yeah. They could play on their instrument. I've actually just come up with a game with one of my ukulele students. She's finding it hard to kind of get engaged. So what I've told her parents to do is just to shout out a chord during any other activity. So they could be watching telly and they'll just turn around to her and go G sharp, and she's got to then run off, find her ukulele, play the chord before she can then continue with what she's doing. Sure. So it's a little game that she's playing, but that will then help her practice. It's only like 30 seconds of her playing the chord, but at least she's doing it.
That's a really good point, actually. That actually is, maybe we should save that for later, because that links with point number 4.
Yes.
So yeah, maybe we'll keep that for a bit later.
Okay.
But what you were saying does link nicely into our second point, which is to have a Google Drive folder that you
or any cloud storage. It doesn't
have to be Google Drive, but that's what I use and that's what you use,
Yeah,
right?
it is.
So yeah, every student I have has a different folder that I give them access to, and each folder has a subfolder for each lesson that I've taught, and that has all the resources we've gone over in the particular lesson. And I've also written up a practice schedule so that the student can't say they didn't know what to practice, and yeah, they have no kind of like it's not like they don't know what to practice. They know exactly what they need to practice for the next lesson. So I think having some sort of cloud storage where your students can go to know exactly what to do is really important. So yeah, I think that basically covers it, right? Do you have any more?
There's one more thing I'd like to say about the Google Drive cloud storage thing, which I find really useful. Is that, let's say a student doesn't quite understand some part of the lesson. What they'll then do is they'll phone me and go, "Oh, Andy, I didn't really get the bit that you were saying about diminished chords. Can you just explain it to me over the phone?" And you can sort of explain it over the phone, but they'll have to remember it, for one, and two, it's just hard to explain. So what I tend to do is I put my phone on the side, do a quick video of me explaining it with my guitar or with my uke or whatever I'm teaching, and then I'll just upload it to the Drive folder, and then they can just play the video. So and then they can keep playing it back, so that then if they didn't quite get it the first time I said it in the video, they can just replay it or whatever they need to do.
Perfect.
Also, quite a lot of the time with rhythm training and stuff, so playing chord sequences, chord patterns and stuff, I'll often put a drum track on their Google Drive, or a backing track, so that then they can play along. I'll put it in different tempos and stuff, so that it's not just what you would then give them on paper in a normal lesson, in a generic, original kind of lesson. You'd be able to give them far more in a Drive folder or something digitally than just paper.
Sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. So that's point number 2. So point number 3 would be to have a curriculum. So having a lesson structure and having an exact plan of action for what you're going to teach your students is super important. A lot of guitar teachers, including myself at the start, I kind of like catered my lesson to each student, kind of thought, oh, what do they need to learn now? And then wrote it down before the lesson. But I figured if you have a curriculum that you go through, then it not only structures the lessons, but it also saves you from like having to spend ages planning each lesson, because okay, this is exactly what they've got to do next. I don't think you have.
I don't have anything quite as structured as you do.
Yeah.
I'll take that.
Yeah,
off you again. Why not? So no, I don't have anything quite as structured, but I do definitely have a kind of a method to the madness.
Sure.
So I will start off with learning how to strum, hold the pick, but all about the guitar. The first session is just it's essentially, what is this bit of wood in front of you, what does it all do, and how we can use it. So then we go through the stages of the different techniques. We'll start with the simple ones like hammer-ons, pull-offs, that kind of thing. Well, that's not even the beginning. Strumming will be the beginning, then we'll start looking at sort of fretting hands and what we can do with that. But no, as you say, your structure and curriculum is far more kind of dense than mine.
Sure.
It's what works for each person, and I do need to kind of write one out and stick to it.
Okay, I can send you this one if you want.
That would be fantastic. Thank you.
Cool. But yeah, basically what this one does is basically there's a load of do you want to hold that for a second? Yeah, there's a list of subjects. So there's like all the beginning stuff like the guitar anatomy and string names and how to read tabs and chord boxes and stuff, and then your first chords, some different strumming exercises, how to use a metronome, some ear training stuff, and it just goes all the way down to more advanced stuff. And this is just all the fundamentals that you should know as a guitarist. And what I do is I have 2 little columns where I tick off, and I have like an introduced column. So I tick it off when I've introduced the subject to the student. And then once I feel like they've mastered it, I'll tick the second column. And with my younger students, it becomes a bit of a competition who can fill up the sheet fastest, and it keeps them motivated as well. And sometimes they'll be like, oh, let's see how many ticks we can tick off in this lesson. So it keeps them engaged with the lessons because it's something quantifiable and measurable that they can track their progress with. It's really cool. So so that is having a curriculum and how that can be quite important. And we mentioned something earlier about this next point, and this next point is that every student is different. So this point is very important. Every student is very different, and every student learns differently and has different life situations, and you have to really take that into account. And like you said earlier, you've got that student who wanted to be more engaged with the ukulele, so you came up with that game, and that's a really cool way of engaging your student. So you really have to just think about what your student would kind of like, and also be sensitive to their different struggles. That's another thing. Every guitar student will have something different that they excel in and something different that they struggle with, and you just have to be patient with them. I think that's the main takeaway of this.
Patience is key with any teaching. That's one of the biggest things is to be patient with them. I don't need to hold it. You can't teach someone if you're expecting them to get it first time.
Yeah, definitely.
That's not teaching. You can't go, right, okay, this is it, okay, move on, let's carry on.
Yeah. Sometimes it takes about a month for a student to like 4 lessons to remember a scale. Sometimes it would take like 2 months to remember like a set of chords or something. So,
but in a different sense, there might be a lesson where someone picks up 10 things in the same session.
Exactly.
It's really,
and that could be the same student as well. So you never know what to expect.
Yeah, there could be. There's just a click moment, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
For me, the biggest challenge is modes.
Yeah,
by far, because it's hard to explain, but it's actually a simple concept.
Check my video on modes explained in 5 minutes if you want to explain them well.
Yeah.
Just copy me.
Yeah. But equally, that might not work for some people. I sometimes teach piano as well, and sometimes I'll go to the piano and show a guitarist what a mode is on piano, because it's a visual thing. It's much easier for them to go, I get it now.
Sure.
And then the moment they get it, then they'll understand the whole concept. It's just about that little tiny bit of information that allows for the light bulb.
Yeah. I think different ways of teaching, having a different way of explaining each subject is quite important. So they may not understand it in a visual way, but they may understand it in a kind of like by listening to something. I don't know. Just have lots of different ways of explaining things so that your students can understand. So we'll move on quickly to the next topic, which is travel. And we were discussing this earlier, how you should probably, if you're going to travel to other students for lessons, set one day of the week where you do that. And if they want you to come to them, then they have to do a lesson on that day and fit your schedule, because the goal is to have a lot of students. And if you have to travel between each student, that's taking away time that you could be teaching. Yeah. So that's a big one. I think, is there anything more we can say about that, really?
You just need to, if you're going to be taking up time doing it, the phrase time is money, and it is in our sense, because if we're sitting at home and we have literally a 2-minute slot between 1:30 and the next lesson, so you have a lesson at 2:00 and then another lesson at 1:30, they literally just walk in, walk out, and you haven't wasted any time. But you could have half an hour of traveling to the next student.
You could teach a lesson in that.
You could have an entire lesson in that time. So you've got to factor in cost as well. So you've got to then charge more to travel to a student, because not only are you wasting maybe petrol or your own money for the bus fare or whatever, but you are also wasting your precious half hour that you could have got X amount of money for the lesson.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So one day a week if you're going to travel to other students. Yeah. Point number 6 is that if your students are making excuses, then you need to improve your guitar lessons. So at the beginning of my guitar teaching journey, I would have a lot of students kind of make excuses for why they couldn't make lessons anymore, like they couldn't afford it, or they're too busy, or what other excuses are there?
I didn't want to practice. I couldn't practice.
Yeah.
All sorts of things. I've heard all sorts.
Yeah. Basically, they're lying, and you didn't teach them very well. That's what it comes down to. Because if you taught them well, then they wouldn't have these excuses.
Well, it's not. I don't think it's necessarily teaching. It is teaching well, but it's inspiring. If you don't inspire them, then they're not gonna come up with these excuses, because they're gonna want to practice and they're gonna want to turn up. And
but inspiring them is a part of teaching, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think it is the same thing at the end of the day, I guess. But if someone isn't inspired, then they're gonna give up eventually. They are just gonna stop. So you need to give them that little nugget of something at the end of the rainbow. Let's get there. Let's a target. Give them a goal.
That's it. Yeah. Just and also it helps to learn different ways of being kind of influential and inspiring. So there's different books and like podcasts and stuff you can listen to where you can improve those skills. So
and those podcasts, those books don't have to be related to music in the slightest.
No, they don't. Well. Just relate them to music from see where you can relate it to your job. So that's excuses and why they're not really excuses. And you just need to improve as a guitar teacher. All right, so tip number 7 is to arrange lessons with your students face to face. Basically, at the end of every guitar lesson, don't forget to book the next lesson. Don't wait for them to contact you again, because they probably won't. Even if they want to keep going with lessons, they just probably won't be bothered. I know from experience as a student recently, I'm taking singing lessons, and I didn't book my last lesson at the end of the lesson, and it's been like a month now, and I haven't got back in touch with my singing teacher, which I will do very soon because I need to and I want to. But that's just how it goes. Students aren't motivated to contact their teacher to book lessons outside of lessons. So make sure you book the next lesson while you're at the lesson. Do you have any more input with this?
Yeah, I mean, I had exactly the same thing from my point of view. I'm learning the double bass.
Awesome.
Or at least I've had
one.
I didn't know that. I've had one lesson.
Okay.
And I've loved it. But I haven't gone back because we hadn't booked one in, and I keep feeling like I need to. But then, has it been too long? Is it taking the mick if I go back and go, hey, look, sorry, it's been a while. But what I'm feeling about my lesson is exactly how everyone else feels. So they could have 6 months and go, do you know, I really want to get back on that, but I messed him around last time, so I can't go back there.
Yeah.
So one of the big points about this, and I recently did it, was you contact every one of your your previous students and go, right, I haven't seen you for ages. How are you? Good point. How are you? I hope everything's well, and would you like to get back into it? Because one of the biggest issues is that people are just insecure and unsure about whether they can go back to someone.
Yeah, that's it.
And you want to be open and be like, do you know what? I don't mind. It's been ages.
Yeah.
So book face to face. That's the easiest thing to do. But also don't be scared to get back in contact with people, because I've already had 2 replies going, actually, I would quite like to get back in touch and start something up, even if it's ad hoc, once every now and again.
Yeah,
it's something, isn't it?
For sure. I find that when I recontact students after a while, they most of the time they do want to take lessons again, and they do take me up on my offer. So definitely take that into consideration. So our next tip is to have backup equipment with you, to have spares of everything. So I am guilty of not following this too well. I do have spares of some things. Like I have a spare guitar for students to use. I have a spare amp for students to plug into. But you're quite organised in this respect, aren't you?
I am, but this is only because I'm a chronic hoarder of instruments.
Sure.
I always have a guitar that I can give to someone or lend to someone for the lesson. And often when I turn up to a lesson at someone's house, I'll have maybe a guitar lesson followed by a bass lesson whilst I'm out and about, and I'll have a guitar in the car and the bass in the car. And if their string has popped and they don't have any more, I can give them the guitar, run out to the car and get the bass, and then we can sort of change the lesson up a little bit, whereby we're having a jam for the session or something. Yeah. So, it's not ideal because there's not two guitars, but it's still very, very useful to be able to sort of chop and change and go, actually, do you know what, mate? Don't worry, I can sort that out.
Yeah.
Most of the time, beginning students, they don't have a guitar, so that's the biggest thing, is to have something that you can lend them for the lesson. Even better is if their parents are not sure if what to get them, or gonna wait until their birthday to get them a guitar or something. If you have a spare guitar, offer to rent it to them for £10 a week or something. Yeah. That will then help towards your end goal of having more income and all of the rest of it. So that's really useful as well. I pretty much have spare guitars so that I can lend them out. I would never take a rubbish guitar to a gig, but I wouldn't mind lending it to someone, because I don't mind if they smash it up a little bit, knock it on a wall or whatever. It doesn't really matter. It's like the workhorse guitar.
Sure. Yeah.
So that's all I have to say about that.
Awesome. Cool. So that renting out guitars, that's another stream of income there for a guitar teacher. If a student doesn't have a guitar, then here you go, £10 a week. You can borrow mine.
Borrow for as long as you like.
Exactly. There we go. So our next tip is about marketing and my experience with how I've got most of my students. So my top tip would be to try every different type of marketing possible, because they have all given me equal amounts of students. So your results might not be the same, but for me, posters, Facebook ads, my website, and online services like lead generation services like bark.com and Tutorful have all provided me with equal amounts of students. So don't limit yourself to just like putting posters up in town. Make sure you try everything. I'm sure I didn't even mention like everything you could possibly do there. Signing up to like an agency, which is kind of what you're
sort of, that's what I do. Yeah. So my version of that is networking. Yeah. So if you network with people, if you know people, then things come eventually. So the way that I work, majority of my students are through an agency, like you said. Now, I wouldn't have got those gigs if I hadn't known the guy who owns the agency and gone to him after I finished uni. I'd really like to get into teaching guitar. Have you got anything that maybe you could send my way? And ending up having a really good friendship with him, and then kind of working from there.
Yeah.
So I'm busy now because of a connection I made years ago, but that is constantly growing, because the more people I meet that also teach guitar, because I've got another guy who I teach ukulele to him, or at least I have a couple of lessons, and then he will then, in exchange for a couple of lessons, he'll send me some students that are maybe just slightly past what he can teach them. So he maybe is just an intermediate guitar teacher or just a beginner guitar teacher, but then I will take it over when they're getting a bit more into the realms of a bit more kind of, can't think of the word. What is it? Better. Yeah, when they're getting a bit more better. Yeah, that one. Yeah. that is really useful, having friends that do it as well, because like I was saying to Dave earlier, what I'm going to do eventually is I have a couple of students that are into, heavier music, and I'm not really into that. I don't really know what I'm doing in that sense. So I will teach them aspects, but as soon as they get to a point where they are better than me, or I can't tell them anymore, I'm going to pass them to Dave. So, and I'd hope that if he has a bass student that needs someone that's a little bit more advanced, then he will send them to me, because that is my forte. I'm a bass player more than anything else, and that's knowing someone is the best thing.
Exactly.
I think.
Never underestimate the power of networking and word of mouth. So knowing lots of people and letting all of them know that you're a guitar teacher, basically, is what that comes down to, really.
Exactly.
Because you'll randomly get people say, oh, and I've got a student for you, or you'll get people saying, oh, I know someone who needs lessons and I can't teach them, so do you want to teach them? So our final point today is to over-deliver and to make sure that your guitar lessons are above and beyond the expectations of your students. Mm-hmm. So some elements of this were that Google Drive thing. A lot of students don't expect you to have like a Google Drive folder where they can go and access materials.
It's a huge shock when you do that.
Yeah,
I've found. Big
yeah.
time.
Students are like, oh wow, that's impressive. Yeah. Also, just being available outside of lessons to help. So students aren't afraid to contact you.
That's exactly it. That's the whole point of this over-deliver, is to be able to still continue to give them a little bit of advice here or there. I'm going to take that from you for a sec.
Sure, go for it.
Because, for example, we also discussed putting another point in there as to, at what point do you know that you're done?
Yeah.
You're done teaching someone. Like, you have to have a goal for your students. So, for example, I have 2 students now that I've given gigs to, my gigs. So I've not done the gig for any reason, and I've gone, do you know what? I know a guy, let's get him in. Yeah. And know that he is going to do the job. So that's also over-delivering in the sense of, right, it's not for me to do, but hey, look, do you want a paid gig? Because I know that you're good enough at what I want you to do. I could put my reputation on the line for this kid because I know he's going to smash it. Yeah. So over-delivering in that sense. And also someone could phone you up. Someone phoned you up earlier going, I didn't quite understand what happened in that lesson. Then you put a video on the file explaining it, or you just explain it over the phone. It doesn't take 30 seconds, does it?
Yeah.
It's just going above and beyond.
Especially with the rates that you're going to be charging as a guitar teacher. It's definitely worth it to just put that extra little bit of effort into making sure your students are happy.
Appreciate them. Appreciate them and make them feel appreciated, because they are your bread and butter.
That's it, and reward them as well. So this is something I'm thinking of doing, is to hold a gig at the end of like every term for my younger students, where I'll get a proper gig set up with lights and everything, and just like showcase them and everything, and make them feel like appreciated for what they've done and all the hard work they've put into playing guitar. It's a definite way of making sure your students feel valued, I guess.
Also gives them a goal, doesn't it?
It gives them a goal. It's just a ton of benefits. There's no real negatives to doing, to making your lessons the best they can be. So my phone ran out of battery, so not battery, it ran out of memory, so we're doing this video on selfie mode. Just to say thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, then drop a like and subscribe to my channel, and also let us know in the comments if you've got any more tips for guitar teachers that are going to help other guitar teachers out. That'd be greatly appreciated. So I'll be doing more videos like this with other people in the music industry talking about tips for guitar players, and keep an eye out on that, and I'll see you in the next video. See you later.
Bye.